Hello, government students. Today we're going to conclude our detailed look at the Illinois Constitution by examining Articles 7 through 14 all at one time. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Article 7 of the Illinois Constitution deals with local government, and by local governments we're talking about municipalities, another name for a town, counties, and special districts. Municipality is a city, village, or incorporated town. And home rule units. A home rule unit is a municipality with more than 25,000 people. So Rockford has a population of roughly 150,000 people, so Rockford is a home rule unit. What home rule means is that you have the power to regulate for public health, safety, and morals, and in doing that you have the power to tax and incur debt. This is something that was introduced into our Constitution in 1970. One of the weaknesses of previous constitutions was that there was very little power given to local governments. So home rule was added in the Constitution of 1970, so now towns have the ability to really control their own destiny much more so than they used to. Prior to home rule, towns had to get approval from the state government and funding oftentimes from the state government to do what towns needed to do to run their city. Interestingly, a town can vote not to be home rule. Even if it's over 25,000 people, a town actually has the option not to be home rule. And here's a little factoid for you. The city of Rockford, population 150,000, voted about I think it was just a couple of years ago, not to be home rule. And we haven't been home rule actually for quite some time. The vote that we had a year or two ago was to institute home rule again after we had voted it down many, many years before. You may wonder why Rockford would have voted not to be home rule, and it really gets down to this issue regarding the power to tax and incur debt. The citizens of Rockford apparently believed, or at least a majority of the citizens of Rockford, did not have trust in their city leadership that they would not raise taxes and go into a higher level of debt. A lot of people who supported home rule thought that was nonsense, and in fact it was a very, very close election. But we do not have home rule in Rockford due to popular choice. Article 8 deals with state finance, and by finance we mean how does the state spend its money. The governor must submit an annual budget, so anything that the state spends money on, it must be budgeted. And then Article 9 deals with revenue. How do we get the money that we use to spend in the state of Illinois? Of course, that comes through taxes. So there are 4 types of taxes allowed in our Constitution. Income tax, that was added in the Constitution of 1970. We also have tax on real property. Real property, you may recall from economics, is property that would include land and the buildings on the land. Okay, that's real property. We also have tax on personal property. Personal property, things like your car, for example. Basically, real property is something that cannot be moved, and personal property is something that you can move. And then we have sales tax. So income tax is tax on your earnings from your work, or from your income tax would also include earnings that you get from your wealth, such as interest or rental money. Real property, again, that's on your real estate, your land, and your buildings. Personal property tax, we don't have a lot of personal property tax, but we do have a little bit of personal property tax, and an example of that would be the tax on your car every year when you get a new sticker to put on your license plate. That is a personal property tax. And of course, in Illinois, I think we're spending somewhere around the neighborhood of 9% or so in sales tax. Okay, Article 10 deals with education in the state. We offer free education through secondary school. So what that means is we offer education for free beginning in kindergarten and then through the 12th grade. Okay, so that is offered in the Constitution free. No public funds can be allowed for religious institutions or institutions that are sponsored by a religious organization. So, Rockford Lutheran School is an institution that is sponsored by the Lutheran Church, both the Missouri Synod Lutheran Church as well as the Evangelical Lutheran Church of America. Both of those Lutheran organizations help to sponsor Rockford Lutheran. Therefore, we cannot get any state money to support our school. Interestingly, though, we can get money from the federal government, and in fact, those old laptop computers that are in the core were funded by federal money from the Department of Education in our national government, but no state money can come our way. Now, the state does allow certain things. The state does allow kind of like a voucher program. They offer assistance to people who would like to send their children to a private school. So public money is used to provide some tuition assistance, but it cannot be given directly to a private school. That is a private school that is a religious-oriented school. Okay, Article 11, the environment. Okay, the environment was added to the Constitution in 1970. Environmentalism was becoming a big deal at that time. It's a little bit vague on how this works in the Constitution, but basically it does say that by law, citizens of Illinois are entitled to a clean environment. And if this right to a clean environment is violated, citizens are allowed to take legal action. And that basically means you can report that someone is doing some what you believe to be illegal polluting. You can report that to the authorities, and you can sue the violator for financial damages if you believe that your right to a clean environment has been violated. Moving on, Article 12 deals with the militia. A militia is a state military organization. The militia includes all able-bodied people in the state except those who are exempt by law. If you are 18 years old in Illinois and you are a citizen of Illinois, more than likely you are a member of the militia. I'll bet most of you who are 18 didn't know that you were militiamen, but in fact you are. Now, let me explain what that means. We have in Illinois a formal militia and an informal militia. The formal militia is our state National Guard, and they're a regular military group that meets and drills and all of that. The informal militia is composed of all the other adults who by law could conceivably be called up to serve in an emergency. So that's what that means. In an emergency, if you're 18 years old, you could potentially be called up to serve in the militia to help out in an emergency. The commander-in-chief of the militia is the governor, so the governor is the commander-in-chief of the Illinois National Guard. And the militia may be called into service of the United States, and if that should happen, then the President of the United States becomes the Commander-in-Chief. So I'll give you an example of how that works. We sent a military force into Afghanistan. We did not have enough regular Army people to go do what we needed to do in Afghanistan, so the President did in fact call some National Guardsmen into the service of the United States and sent them to Afghanistan in that military operation we did there. That was then done, and the President became the Commander-in-Chief of those forces as long as they were serving the United States in that capacity. Otherwise, though, the militia is under the control of the governor. Members of militia are exempt from arrest except for in cases of felony, breach of peace, or treason. That is when you are in active duty. So think about it. If you're in the National Guard, the formal militia, and you have to meet, typically they meet one weekend a month. You might be on your way to your monthly National Guard duty. If you should stop on the way to duty and steal a bag of potato chips at the local road ranger store, you would actually be exempt from arrest in that case, because that would not be considered a felony, a breach of peace, or treason. Now, let me just stress that if you did that, if you did steal a little bit or do something against the law in that way, thinking that you're going to get off because you're in the militia, it ain't going to work that way. More than likely, it will be reported by the person you steal from to your commanding officer at the National Guard, and you would get in big trouble with your commanding officer for abusing that right of exemption from arrest. Okay, we're almost done. Article 13 deals with more general provisions, not specific to a single type of subject matter. One of the things in Article 13 is that all candidates for public office must submit a statement of economic interests. We've talked about that a little bit before. If you're running for the General Assembly, you're running for an office in the executive branch, or if you're running for judge, you must submit a statement of economic interests. The public has a right to know where your money is, what your investments are, because we want to make sure that you're not running our government in such a way that your motive is to maximize your own wealth. You are disqualified from public office if you are convicted of treason, felony, or breach of peace. That term, breach of peace, again, appears a lot, and that basically means that it's disturbing the peace. It's doing something which is disturbing the peace of society. You're getting drunk in the middle of the night and yelling and screaming, or fighting with people, that sort of thing. And the last article in the Constitution is Article 14. Article 14 is the amendment process. I'm not going to get into the details of this on our Constitution test, just to let it be known that amendments are proposed by the legislature or by a petition of 8% of the electorate. We have here in Illinois about 12.8 million residents. Probably of that number, somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 or 9 million are eligible to vote. That would be the electorate. So 8% of that 8 or 9 million people signing a petition would allow then an amendment to be considered. Once the amendment is proposed either by the legislature or by 8% of the electorate, it must be approved by the voters in a general election. And that approval is in the form of a simple majority. In most general elections, not all, but most general elections, there is usually an amendment that is being considered. And of those amendments being considered, I would say more often than not, they are approved. It seems like, typically, not always, but typically, the amendments are for something that most people acknowledge, something could be working a little bit better. So that is it for our presentations on the Illinois Constitution. Check again. I believe you have a worksheet to do regarding these articles 7 through 14. And with that, I'll sign off. You guys have a great day.